Hey, everybody, this is TJR.
And this is Robert Kinsler.
And earlier in the week, actually on Thanksgiving Day, we made a video after watching episode 1 of Get Back. And we told everybody that we were going to watch the whole thing and then come back a few days later and discuss the whole thing. This is that video. This is that day. For this video, though, we wanted to take a different approach. Instead, we each wrote down a series of questions about the film that we're going to ask each other. And then we're going to hear each other's response and we're going to give our own response. I don't know what Robert's responses are going to be. He doesn't know what my responses are going to be. We thought this would be a unique way to talk about this film as opposed to just an open-ended conversation, which we quite frankly were afraid could go on forever if we were left unchecked. So I guess that's why we both have spouses, to keep us from doing that. So here we go. Do you want to start? Shall I?
Why don't you shoot me the first question?
Okay. How would you summarize this movie to someone who has not seen it?
Well, I think in a nutshell, this is how I would do that. This is perhaps your one and only chance to see the greatest rock and roll band of all time write, craft, and create and record a complete album. Come on, this is the Beatles we're talking about here. I mean, there's been this kind of thing in the studio, watching bands do this and that, but literally you get to see the whole process here. I mean, a lot of it is the band's sitting around, they're procrastinating, they're trying to find their footing. As we talked about in the previous episode when we talked about part 1, we even had to deal with kind of the crisis when George left the band at the end of part 1. But I mean, you see everything here. I mean, you truly are a fly on the wall, and I'm not saying that all fans would want to sit through. Let me take that back. Not everyone in the audience might necessarily want to sit through the whole 8 hours of this, but I guarantee you, musicians and Beatles fans are more than happy, just like you were and I were. We were very happy to sit through this entire thing and watch it.
You are right. I was very happy to sit through this, but I agree with everything you said. To answer it, I don't know if I could really answer it better than you just said it, but the only thing I would add is this is one of the most intimate portrayals you're going to ever be able to see of one of the greatest rock bands in the world. And that's the only thing I'll add.
I mean, it would be nice if we had that for every album they worked on, but it would have changed. As we saw here, it would change the dynamics of how those albums were created. And we might not have the Sgt. Peppers we have today, or we might not have the Abbey Road we have today. So, fate worked everything out, but boy, is it nice that we have this, right?
It is nice that we have it. Yes. And so now it's time for you to ask the next question.
What was your favorite musical moment in Get Back?
Okay. Because of course, there are so many. There's so many. But there was one moment in particular where it's like the light bulb went off for me. Paul is at the piano and he's playing and singing Strawberry Fields Forever on the piano, which is a John Lennon song. John Lennon, he's the one who wrote it, or primarily wrote it. Maybe Paul helped a little bit here and there, but primarily it's John's song. And he sang the lead vocal on it. But he's sitting there singing it, playing the piano. And what I started to think about was, of course, the Beatles stopped touring because, one, they were burned out. They were tired of playing where they couldn't hear themselves because everybody was screaming. They didn't have the kind of PA and monitor systems that we have now. We were all the richer for it because they began to work on more complex arrangements, not being concerned with whether or not they could perform this stuff live. And I would always say, not without taking a whole band of musicians with them, to play the other parts. But when I heard Paul playing that on piano, I thought to myself, he could have played that on piano. John was playing a little bit of lead guitar over it. George could have played the baritone guitar, which him and John took turns playing throughout this film to substitute for bass when Paul was at the piano. And I thought they could have played a lot of these songs from Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour. they could have found ways to arrange them with the four of them had they wanted to. There's no doubt in my mind about that now. Hearing Paul play it on the piano, how he approached it, the creative way in which he approached it, I thought, yeah, I could easily hear this working. Led Zeppelin used to do it all the time. They would change their arrangements from what they had in the studio, which had lots of orchestration, and when I say orchestration, I just mean layering of instruments, not necessarily an orchestra, but just the layering of instruments, versus as a four-piece when they played live. So yeah, I could see where they could have done that. And to me, that was like a real amazing musical moment for me, was that, for that reason.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. No,
your turn.
Good choice. Yeah. Well, I was going to say and I mentioned it when we did our earlier episode on this, but just the whole process of how they kind of, you see Get Back from its initial creation, and they work on it in part one, and then you also see it where they see John Lennon's not there. It's Paul showing kind of Ringo and George, but then in part two, you see it where it's all four of the Beatles and Billy Preston is joined by that time, and then they're continuing to fine tune it. And I love to see the whole span here, how you're getting to see this great Beatles classic kind of come to life, And then obviously in the third part, you get to see the rooftop performance of it. So it's really neat, I think, that and I kind of alluded to that earlier, but it's great to really see how the Beatles and kind of the creative process, how, one of the Beatles might have an idea for the song, but then it comes to life and it fully lives when all the other members of the band, put their parts on it and their input on it and everything. And that to me is really great. And I'm going to cheat by saying the other thing I really liked is where Ringo brings in his idea for Octopus's Garden on day 17, and he plays it on the piano, and then George helps him complete it by getting on the guitar. And you see the kind of warmth and the camaraderie between those two, because
Absolutely.
Again, everything, those guys were kind of in the shadow of Lennon and McCartney in terms of songwriting, but it was nice that Ringo had the confidence to kind of bring his idea. He sits down at the piano and he's able to, and I just thought that was a really nice sequence.
I agree. They are both nice sequences. And I think it's just a matter of time before somebody out there on the internet makes an edit of Get Back, from McCartney's first moment where he's just pounding on two notes and singing gibberish to the rooftop performance, a compilation video of just that. And someone puts it up on the internet on YouTube. It's only a matter of time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody with a lot of editing skills and ambition.
And if the Beatles camp is watching, hopefully they'll do it first.
Yeah.
They'll put it together first. Take Peter, they've got access to the best quality footage. So there you go.
Exactly.
All right. So good question. So now it is my turn to roll the roulette on the gun here.
Okay.
And what revelations, if any, surprised you the most?
Okay, let me think about that just a second. What comes to mind for me is just, and I know we talked to, because there are essentially three parts to this, but there's also, part one, I would say, is kind of like where the tension, and then when George leaves, the second part would be the reconciliation of the band, where they kind of mend, and then the third part is when they're firing on all cylinders. I'm sorry, everybody. They're very excited, and they do the rooftop concert, and they feel really good about it. So I would say that even though they went into this, they didn't maybe know where it was ultimately going. Like they didn't even know where they were going to do their live performance as part of the film. It's really how they are so extremely talented, so unique. They rose to the challenge, both for the recording sessions and also obviously for the live concert. And I would say that might be the big takeaway for me. How about you, as far as a revelation?
Mine's much smaller. Mine's not quite so grandiose.
Okay.
Previously, I had no idea just how many of the rooftop performances made the final cut of the album. And now I know just how much of it was really live. So that was one revelation. Also, the second thing, each performance of Dig a Pony has them using the All I Want Is You introduction and the closing, which when we talked about the Get Back album, when we did our video on that, I refer to that as like an alternate version of Dig a Pony because it opens with all I want is you, and it ends with that, which the album cut doesn't, I described that as an alternate version, but now I realize there was nothing alternate about it. In every single performance that I watched in that film, they performed the song that way. That tells me that Phil Spector came in and did some editing.
Right.
So that it didn't start that way and didn't end that way. He did some editing there for that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying what Phil Spector did was good or bad. I've always enjoyed the album cut version. But now that I am made aware of this, I think we really need to have a fully mixed and mastered version of Dig a Pony with the original opening and closing re-edited back in. We need to have that.
Yeah.
And that is something that I would love to see released as a single.
Yeah, I agree. No, good point. I entirely agree with you. Yeah. Yeah.
But yours was so much more grandiose, though.
Yeah,
I like your answer better.
That's important points you made there. Yeah, and it's good to get each other's perspectives. My turn now we're so involved in the talking. My turn to ask a question,
Yes.
Right? So the next one I have here is, what was the most emotional or startling moment in the movie for you?
Okay, well, emotional is easy. That one's easy. And I've heard a lot of people talk about this already. It's been all over the internet. It's been all over the comments. I see people posting this on YouTube. Early on, episode 2, Paul and Ringo, along with Michael Lindsay Hogg, Linda's there, I believe. They contemplate what might happen if George doesn't return. And also on top of that, John hasn't shown up yet.
Right.
And there's that moment where we get the close-up of Paul. And there is this real look of fear in his eyes. He looks like he might start crying even, where he wonders if it's really over. And that's where he mentions, and this is what everybody's been saying on the internet, that's where he says, and then there were 2.
Exactly. And it's funny. And we did not talk about this, everybody. That's exactly what I have written down here. And his whole, as I recall, and I rewatch, he's kind of like very nervous, looks really very vulnerable. It's not the Paul McCartney we typically see, a very, very disconcerting moment in the film, really very chilling.
Yeah. Now, there is one other that I want to bring up, though. There's one thing I want to bring up here that while we're on this topic here. This is also, I don't know if it's emotional, but it's definitely startling for me. And I thought about this quite a bit after I saw part 2, I even wrote a note saying I definitely want to talk about this. The scene with the hidden microphone.
Right. After
John comes back, they go have a conversation in a cafeteria and there's a hidden microphone. So that, first of all, just startled me that Michael Lindsay Hogg did that. He hit a microphone. But they have this conversation where they basically discuss each other's shortcomings.
Right.
And how, because of that, they've managed to marginalize George. And John even says, we both have egos. They come to terms with the fact that they are both equally to blame. They do point the finger at each other, but they also point the finger at themselves, which is impressive, I think. Because I'm sure they have big egos. How could you not have a big ego when you're in a band that was as big as they were, and yet they're able to say, hey, we're both to blame. We both did this. And I think that's just impressive. It shows a great deal of emotional maturity. Whatever you might say, Paul was very demanding. John was too dependent on Yoko. And those aren't necessarily my criticisms. That's just criticisms I've heard. You got to give them credit for just, both of them taking responsibility. It's both our faults.
there's an enormous amount of self-reflection there. Now, obviously, the Beatles were very mature and stuff, but remember, they're both in their 20s here. They're not, 50-something-year-old men looking back. I mean, it does show that they were very aware of themselves and the dynamics in the group, and maybe something that they wouldn't say among a large group, but they were willing to share with each other, knowing the seriousness of the situation. Yeah, no, and I think I don't think I need to really add anything. I think you pretty much nailed that.
Okay, all right. So then, in that case, then I will ask a question now, and I am hoping this will be a mood changer. Here we go.
Okay, let's hope so.
What was the funniest moment or moments in this film for you? And I'm giving you a tough one.
Yeah, no, there's so many. I mean, I guess.
Think of what comes to mind first. That's the easiest way to tackle this
I think there's a scene, and it might be in part 2, where Paul greets Ringo when he comes into the studio, and they start jamming together on the piano. And I think it's like, I bought a piano the other day or something. Maybe I hope that's a title. And they play it for a bit there, and then right when they stop, they only play a little bit of it. Ringo just does this funny little dance move, and it's like, this is before George has rejoined the band. So it's like, even when things are very serious and the future of the band is definitely uncertain at this point, they're still able to have kind of that goofy, wonderful camaraderie that from the early period, from A Hard Day's Night kind of era and stuff. And then not long after that, I think, where Paul's playing a song and Ringo's mouthing it. He's not even really singing along, and he's hamming it up for the camera. And you realize how much personality that the Beatles had. Even here, like they said, everybody said, "Oh, Let It Be" is a breakup period and stuff, but you're still seeing some really wonderful and fun moments, I think, in this. How about you?
I had forgotten about the piano jam. That was a great moment too, by the way. Just not even just funny moment, with the dance, but that was just a great moment. Just watching.
Yeah, it was just a great moment. Yeah,
wonderful moment. Okay, so funniest moments for me. There's so many. First of all, of course, which makes it a hard question.
Yeah,
but if I had to narrow it down, one real favorite for me did not really have the Beatles in it. It was when Mal, their road manager, was talking to the London Bobbies inside the Apple building, and he's totally BSing them about the whole PA thing. So we've got a PA here and there's a PA there. And so I'm sure if we turn one of them off, it'll change, it'll help, And it's like, that's not going to change anything. The instruments are still going to be played. It's like, he's just BSing them. He's stalling for time.
He's stalling them, yeah.
He goes away. He comes back and he says, okay, I've turned off one PA. There's one, but I've got to go over and turn off the other PA. It's like, no, he doesn't. And I just realized he's totally bullshitting these guys, During that whole time, I also wondered, how much did Debbie, the receptionist, actually really know? Because she kept saying, well, I don't know what's going on. There's a film they're making. And she just kept acting like she didn't understand anything. And I wondered, being the receptionist, how much did they tell her? How much did she really know? How much did she not know? Was she just stalling the Bobbies too with BS, pretending to not know anything? The more, if I believe that she knew full well everything, then it's really funny listening to her, because she's so just like pulling one over on them. I'd like to think that she knew,
and they're and the Bobbies are so irritated, but it's like they're just not getting anywhere. It's great.
They're not getting anywhere with them, and they're just stalling them like crazy. There's also the part where that one guy comes out and says, oh, that's quite a crowd out there. Look at that. And, and he's also just messing with them as well.
Yeah.
So that's,
you're right. And that stuff is just great.
I want to mention two other funny moments though. Can I mention? Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So real quick. At the end of the film, when you've got all these takes, I think they're playing Let It Be, and there's all these takes that they keep showing them when they're downstairs in the studio. And John's quips there, his last quip, which ends the film. Are we supposed to be giggling during the solo? No. Oh. I just love that line. That just stays burned in my memory. Anyways, love that. That's number 2. Number three, you may remember during the rooftop concert, they're getting audience reaction. And there's the little old lady who is really pissed off.
Yeah.
And she's saying, "This makes no sense at all." She said that. Superfan who was watching with me grabbed the Apple remote, hit pause, turned to me and said, "I didn't know John Cleese was in this movie."
Why'd you say Burma? I panicked.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Anyways, so those are to me the funniest moments. Those are the ones that pop off first in my
and
head.
There's so many. I think every time you watch it, you're gonna fall in love with another funny moment.
Absolutely. There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
I could go on, but I'll just stop at those.
Yeah.
So now my turn.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, wait. No,
I think it is. Oh, is it my turn? Okay.
Yeah. Here.
So what were some of the biggest takeaways after watching the docuseries for you?
Biggest takeaways. Throughout all the rehearsing, writing, and recording, I was amazed at just how much musical goofing off there was. Because I knew that they goofed off a lot, but I didn't realize how much. I would say the majority, when they're working, there is a good 50 to 60% of them just musically goofing off with each other. And what surprised me is how much it added to their camaraderie and how it didn't diminish their ability to create great music when it was time to hit the record button. In fact, I got to thinking that maybe it really helped. So often, and this is unusual to me, because so often, if the musicians are just goofing off, nothing's getting done. No work's being done. But they had this way of working, letting off steam, by goofing off. And then when it came time to hit record, they were just on their game. And I think the point of this, that I would say to other musicians in regards to this, is take the music seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. It certainly worked for the Beatles.
Yeah. And
it's something I am going to think about a lot as a musician. I do have one other takeaway, though, that I want to bring up here. This is a very personal one. Watching this film, I began to realize how much I miss being a musician. And you don't stop being a musician. I'm still a musician. I can still play, you don't stop. But there was a time in my life when I was being a musician every single day. I was playing out, at least 4 nights a week in most cases, sometimes more. Once in a while, maybe a little less, but usually at least 4 nights a week, I was playing out. I was constantly having to learn new material. I was recording stuff all the time. I was working on other people's recordings. I was just doing this a lot. I was doing the business end of it too. And I was doing it all the time. And I realized, how much I miss it, and I haven't been in that position for the last probably 4 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. Done a few things here and there. We both worked on the Project True album. We got back together and did that album. I've done a few outside things here and there, but they're very few and seldom now. And I haven't had much motivation to practice as much. And after watching this film, I thought I kept wanting, after each time watching, I wanted to go upstairs and play my piano or play my guitar.
Yeah.
And you may remember a while back, I put out a little digital EP of Beatles songs as piano instrumentals.
Yeah, I sure do remember that. Yeah.
And I sat at the piano and tried to play some of those, and I couldn't remember my arrangements.
Wow. Okay.
I was like, I had to go pull up the recordings, listen to them again. Oh, that's what I did. And then try to find how I figured them out, because they were instrumentals. There were no vocals. And I'd forgotten, because it'd been so long. And I thought, wow. And I don't, like I said, it was a very sad moment for me, and I stopped doing it all the time because the work dried up and I got my first real, full-time corporate job, however you want to say it. But I realized, and trust me, I'm grateful, especially with the pandemic and everything. Most of the musicians that I know got really screwed.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not ungrateful, but I do miss it.
Yeah.
And it really hammered that home that I miss it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. What comes to mind, in preparing the questions is I was thinking, going back to when I was a little kid, other people, you're talking with your friends, other musicians, you see it on the internet. Who's your favorite Beatle? And I kept thinking the biggest takeaway for me, and I've always kind of thought it, but this certified it for me, is that you take away any one of the Beatles and it would have changed everything. You see their personalities so vividly here. Like, George is very pragmatic here. We talked at length about him leaving, but when they're talking about going to Tripoli or somewhere in northern Africa to perform in this outdoor amphitheater, and he says, well, the audience there, they're not going to speak English. You're going to have an Arab audience. You'd have to have a ship full of people. That's going to be expensive. And then they're kind of countered. He said, we can't even get, an amplifier company to give us an amp, but he was, and he's, and Ringo, you see, he doesn't, we have talked that there's some funny moments, but he's very serious behind his drum kit and keeping everything moving. John is kind of humorous. Paul is kind of the guy trying to get everything going. Hey, we only have so, but you see all their personalities and you see how all of them were essential to getting things done and making it right, and, they were all obviously very talented, but their chemistry really meshed so magically together. It's in a way that just hasn't happened too many times in the musical universe.
It's the personality chemistry. It's the musical chemistry. Yeah. And we could talk about that for hours too.
Yeah, for hours. Exactly. But you really see it here. It's not just, your hunch. You actually see it play out over the course of these 8 hours. You really do.
Well said.
So my next question is, what was the single most, or you might want to talk about a few notable achievements that Peter Jackson's vision brought to Get Back?
I've always thought this over the decades, but this film kind of really, really brought it home and proved my point. You should never assume you know everything about the artists that you admire. And I've seen people do this with famous musicians, actors, professional athletes, people assuming they know of everything about this person, or they know what they're thinking, or they know what, whatever about them. There were so many narratives that fans have circulated and talked about over the years about this particular period of time in their history. There's so many narratives that were popular narratives. This 8 hours, almost 8 hours of footage, blows a lot of those narratives, at least in part, out of the water. And I qualify that by saying, true, there are aspects of those popular narratives that do hold some truth, but it was never the whole story. And now we've been given a lot more of that whole story. And a lot of those narratives, at least partially, have been blown out of the water. And so there's always way more nuance, shades of gray than anybody realizes. Whether you're talking about rock stars, professional athletes, politicians, there's way more shades of gray than the popular narratives that you and your friends are throwing at each other. There's always way more to it than you realize. And this film, I think, proves that. And I would say apply that to everything else in life, as far as how you look at people you admire, and even famous people you hate, no matter what they are. Like I said, athletes, politicians, keep that in mind at all times. If there was one great lesson, that's what I think he brought to this, is he brought that idea about the Beatles in this time period. I'm sorry, I got a little off track there, but that's what Peter Jackson brought to it, that idea, but also this film teaches that lesson. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but to me, it teaches that lesson. There we go.
Yeah, no, I agree, very much agree with you on that. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
A
So
lot of lessons
now,
here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. That I just said there's a lot of lessons that I think everybody there's this is a very intense and amazing film, and there's a lot to learn from it.
If you
I mean,
allow it, there's a
yeah.
lot to learn from it.
So for me, I would say, Peter Jackson's biggest achievement was kind of capturing that mix of tragedy and triumph, and capturing the immense friendship that the Beatles still had. Like I said, we'd always been led to believe that this is a dark chapter. The Beatles were miserable, and we've been talking about it. There was some great parts of the series where even after the thing where George leaves, they bring him back. They're still very light and amazing moments where you really see how close they were, and that added to how well they worked together. The other thing I want to say about is, especially as a film builds towards its conclusion, just the way with all the split screens and how those were edited together, and they really propelled the film forward. And I just love that, and I thought it was really amazing. And that's one of the reasons, that whole sequence with the rooftop, you're going to have to probably watch it a few times because there's a lot going on. And I thought he did a brilliant job with that.
Correct me. Was some of that split screen camera stuff used in the original film?
And I'm blanking out now, but I don't recall it being used like
Okay.
this.
If anyone
Yeah.
knows, let us know. I
Yeah, let
wasn't
us know.
sure. And I wondered during some of those moments where you had the split screen, did Peter Jackson just take Michael Lindsay Hogg's completed split screen footage and just put it in because it was the right time to do it?
Yeah, yeah.
Don't know for sure.
It sure looked, I have to say, it sure looked fresh here in the context of seeing this cut of the movie. Parts of it were just almost chilling, just how great they were. And I saw this movie for the first time when I was a little kid in the theater, and then I didn't see, it was not available then. And then we watched the bootleg together, but it was not a great viewing experience either time for me. I just don't,
Same here.
remember it sounding very good. Seeing, this was just a revelation.
It was a bad bootleg. What can you say?
Yeah.
It was a bootleg. It looked terrible. It sounded terrible.
Yeah.
The original word when this film was first announced was that we would also get a re-released Let It Be remastered. So I'm assuming that's still going to happen. When we get the Blu-ray release of Get Back, we'll also get a Blu-ray release of Let It Be, the original film, fully remastered. So we'll just wait and see.
That's all the questions. I think we've covered a lot of ground, but why don't we still talk about any closing thoughts we have?
This was a great weekend. Thanksgiving weekend was a great weekend. When people asked me afterwards, how was your Thanksgiving? Oh, it kicked ass. I watched Get Back over Thanksgiving weekend. It was great. That's what I tell people, and there are a few people who answered, what's Get Back?
What's wrong with these people? I have to tell you, TJ, I'm going to be, the audience is going to know we're keeping it real here. So, obviously Thursday, I watched it. I got up super early. We did the episode. So that was Thursday. Friday morning, I got my booster shot. And because of a medical situation I have, it was a rough 36 hours, but I still watched part 2 on Friday, and obviously the finale on Saturday. And like you, it helped me get through the post booster shot, blues, but the thing I want to say about this is that, watching the Beatles here, and they were very young, and knowing that 2 of them are gone now and George Martin is gone, is very emotional, I think, because you're so immersed with them for so many hours, and you really are brought into the studio with them. You're, like we keep saying it, you're a fly on the wall. Just a very powerful experience. And the last thing I want to maybe say is, it made me realize, especially as I seen social media just blow up about, have you seen it, and people sharing their recollections. The Beatles are a band for their audience that everybody has a deeply personal connection, like they're my band, even though we know that they're the world's rock band, but and it's yet another chance for all the Beatles fans to come together and and get kind of live through something very special together, more than 50 years after they put all this stuff down on film.
I love the way you said it. They're the world's band. and they seem to so far belong to every generation. You know, even my mother, who made it to 91 years of age, had her favorite Beatles songs that she liked. You know, when I talk to people across different cultures, generations, you know, it's like, even if they're just casual fans, they still have maybe those one or two Beatles songs that they really dig the hell out of. And if they hear it, they suddenly go, yes. They're like, you know, the light turns on inside of them when they hear it. I think I've only run across maybe two that have said, no, I don't like anything by the Beatles, anything. And that's fine. It's a free world, act accordingly.
It's a free world. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah. So I guess now let's ask everybody else. If you want to answer the same questions we asked each other, give us your answer, give us your takeaways, give us your final thoughts. And if you have questions that we didn't ask that you want to ask them. And please, everybody watching and reading, do your part and answer them. We will do our part to answer them too. We can't promise to answer everything, though. Once again, as always, I read every single comment that comes in. I can't answer them all, but I do read every single one, and I try to answer wherever I can. And Robert does too. Yeah. And just let us know what you think. As always, if you like these videos and want to see more, please click the like button so that the YouTube algorithm recognizes us. Also, we'd love it if you subscribed and hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. And now I want to thank the mighty and powerful. We need a theme song for them. The mighty and powerful patron supporters. I think I got to write that, actually. I should do that. We want to thank them for their support. If you'd like to be a patron supporter, please go to patreon.com/TJR the original. And if you can't be one, that's fine too. Just click like and you show your support that way. And Robert, this was fun. Maybe we will try this approach in the future. And
hey, we're making up for lost time here, because we've been talking about trying to get to some of the other Beatles films and discuss them. And boy, we got a really great one here.
Yeah, we'll do more. And everybody, thank you for watching. We hope you all stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.